morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the Bonsai Stuff podcast from wherever you are around this beautiful planet of ours. I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and as always, I love it that you've come back. Thank you very much for listening in. So, to start the episode, I just want to say that it's been a great time for me working on some of my favourite trees, some of my favourite species, the junipers, getting in, cleaning them out, making sure that they're set up and ready to go. I try not to overwork them. They're one of the trees specifically that I allow to grow quite extensively in between sessions to make sure that they can regenerate their strength and their health. And they're one of the most rewarding species, and one of the most common, to be honest. I think everyone listening will pretty much have a juniper of some kind in their collection, or have had a juniper sometime in the past in their collection. Even if you've turned the corner and you've moved on and you don't have them in your collection anymore, I'm sure there was a point in time where they were there. And anyway, what I wanted to do with this podcast is focus in on some things that I was thinking about while I was working on a massive Femina juniper. And if you've had a look at Instagram or Facebook, you would have seen or Threads, you would have seen the tree itself. I've worked on it for nearly 10 years, coming up to 10 years now, and it's one of my favourite. It's a nightmare because it's so bloody sharp. And it teaches you respect every step along the way when you work on it. If you get a bit lax, if you get a bit distant with your thoughts, then it tends to shove one of the sharpest, driest needles into your skin somewhere that stays there for about 3 or 4 weeks, and it's impossible to get rid of. So it's like the sea urchin of a bonsai world. Anyway, I wanted to just run through a few things just to start the year off. We're nice and fresh. This is only episode 2 for season 7 of the podcast, so we're nice and early for us in Australia. For those in the colder climates, I'm sure there's a downtime at the moment because of the winter dormancy, so you'll be getting into the work soon. So it's just a few things, a few tidbits, I suppose, that I worked my way through for the podcast that I'll share with you today. So settle in; it should be a good one. Pruning practice is something that we do almost every single time. Well, it should be done almost every single time that you work on any of your bonsai. And the tools that we use for that are your scissors, your pruning scissors, which are generally, for me, they're the best ones that I have. They're the most comfortable in my hand, and it's really important that they're the cleanest and the sharpest. And working through any tree, whether it was decandling before Christmas or whether it was going through this juniper and pruning, I'd find that there would always be a build-up, especially when you're working on a tree that's got a lot of foliage, like a lot of branches on it. The thicker, the more advanced, the more developed your tree is, the more cuts you've got to make, the more sap you're going to get on your damn blades. So you need to make sure that you're constantly stopping and cleaning. And what I would do, the trick that I would use was, because I find that I get a bit of a singular focus when I'm working on a pad. I look at the thing and I'm thinking of the shape. Like, what am I doing? Am I cleaning the unders? Am I doing the profile from left to right? Am I doing the profile from front to back? And it's really important that I've got that focus. But as I'm trimming away, the last thing I'm really looking at is the tip of my scissors before I'm making the cut. So what I would do is I'd find that they would get a little bit sticky when I'd try and open them, and that little bit of resistance would be the trigger for me to say, okay, all right, I've got to stop and clean the scissors. And once I did it, once I removed all the sap that was on there and gave them a little bit of a sharpen, which only takes seconds, like probably 15, 20 seconds of sharpening continually to get that really sharp tip or sharp edge on the blade, the bevel, I found that the pruning would go actually quicker for me. I'd start and I'd be really starting to fly through it, really, really trimming quite nicely. And then all of a sudden I'd find that I'd get that little bit of resistance again and I'd have to stop. So for me, it was probably every pad that I worked on, I would be stopping to clean the scissors on average, thereabouts. And this thing's got, I don't know how many pads, a lot of pads on it, but it would be something that I would be stopping to do regularly, and I found that it would make my job a lot easier. So that was the first thing. You get better, cleaner cuts, which means the tree is going to heal from what you've done a lot easier, rather than just sort of smashing your way through with dull, blunt dirty scissors and making those cuts sort of crush the fibres as opposed to just severing them nice and neatly where the tree will clean. I find that with the juniper especially, you're going to end up with that less of that brown damage through the tree if you use nice sharp tools. Not hard to do. It's really easy, especially if you can get some kind of a system. I think if you had a whetstone or something like that to sharpen your scissors, then it's a bit of a process. It's a bit of a chore. So I don't think it'd be the sort of thing that you'd do regularly. I know I definitely didn't when I was using that as a method for cleaning my tools, or for sharpening my tools. Sorry, not cleaning. But just getting something that's quick and easy. Just search through your local hardware store. I'm sure there'll be something in there. But if you get something that's quick and easy to keep that tool that you're working on super sharp, and don't let it become dull, because then it becomes harder and harder to sharpen these things. So more frequent sharpening of your tools is far better than that. Once a year, once every 6 months, sit down and clean the tools. You'll find that it'll work a lot better, a lot more efficiently, and the tree will not only handle whatever work it is you've done to it, but it'll bounce back. It'll be vigorous. And I've talked a long time ago about the 1%ers, the little things that make such a big difference. And I thoroughly believe that the sharper your tools are, the better your work's going to be, and the better your work's going to be, the better the tree's going to respond. Better the tree responds, the quicker you get to the goal that you are setting yourself for that particular tree. Anyway, so the next one, moving on. When I work on, I'll talk about myself. I won't talk about what you do, but I find that when I work on a large tree, it's very hard for me to stay focused, because you're sort of wanting to jump around, and it's exciting. You look at maybe a piece of material that's in front of you, and you can see the trunk line that you've got. You can see which branches you want to keep. You can see where this tree is going to be in sort of 5 or 10 years, and you're thinking, oh, wow, that's fantastic. And you're jumping towards the end very quickly. But you have to be thorough. You have to work each little area, each little branch that you're working on, each little area that you're pruning has to be to the absolute best of your ability. And it has to be given your complete concentration, because you need to work each area thoroughly before moving on. So it's like I put on a pair of horse blinkers, where all I do is I just focus on that one thing. And for me, obviously cleaning, start at the apex, work my way down the tree. And the apex it can be seen as one of the hardest sort of areas of the tree to work on. And it's often when you first start, it's like, how I can develop a pad, but I can't develop an apex. It's going to take so long, but it doesn't. The apex is 99% of the time the strongest area of the tree, and it wants to develop quicker than any other area. So setting the bones in that area will make the apex develop. So don't worry about that. But it's the shaping of the apex that often can be a bit daunting, because a pad's easy. Well, relatively easy. You look at it at an individual level, at a branch level. You want to have a certain shape, whether it's a cloud, or whether it's more flatter structure, or whatever it is. But the apex is like, okay, well, how do I dome this thing? I don't want it to look like a soldier's helmet, or I don't want it to be too full and too broad, but I don't want it to be too narrow and too skinny. So what's the perfect structure for that apex? And that's a you issue, because it's it can be whatever you want it to be based on your idea of perfect with your tree. But I find that for me, I've got to, when I work an apex, not only look at it from the front on, but I've got to look at it from the side. So I'm constantly shuffling. I love the turntables that we use with bonsai, because I get to turn the tree around and look at it and make sure that from all different angles, this thing is going to look exactly as I want it to look. So not only am I pruning from the front, sort of up towards the top of the peak of the tree, the very tip of the apex, but from the side, I'm also looking at it to make sure that I've got that rounding of the apex that I want. And like I said, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. It doesn't have to be one big dome, but for me, depending on the type of tree it is, sometimes I want that, sometimes I don't, sometimes I do. So it's really important to change your perspective when you're looking at the apex, or any of your pads. If I like to work a pad front on, because I get to see exactly what it's going to look like with that sloping left and right as I'm looking back in towards a tree. But then the front to back, I want to slope as well. I don't want it like a static flat top. So then I'll turn the pad onto the side and look at it from the side perspective, and I'll get to see how it lifts up at the front and how it drops down at the back of the pad as well. So, and I'll do it from both sides of the tree. So I'll spin it to the right one time, work on that side, then I'll spin it back to the left, and I'll work on that side. And I find that that being thorough and making sure that I can tick a box and say, yes, you've been thorough. You've looked at it from the left. You've looked at it from the right. You've looked at it from the front. You've looked at it from the back. It's like, well, it might not be perfect. It might still need development to be done, but I can definitely tick the box and say I've been thorough. And it makes such a big difference that I don't want to put this tree, it's bloody heavy, it's big, it weighs a ton, it's painful to move by yourself, and it's, normally calls for a trip to the chiropractor afterwards, but I don't want to put it back on the bench and then look at it, because I do look at my trees every single day, and I don't want to look at it in a month's time and go, geez, I really should have done that better. I really should have put more work into that area of the tree, and I've let myself down. And that's why that particular tree, for different reasons, commitments for bonsai and commitments for non-bonsai things, it was about 3.5 days in the workshop, which is for me, it's a really long time. But a couple of things, I didn't want to rush it. I wanted to be thorough. I was deliberately being absolutely thorough with this thing because I looked at some of the work that I'd done last year, and yeah, look, I'm happy with the tree, but I'm also super critical of myself. And I looked at different areas and I thought, you could have done that better. That part there should have been cut off. It should have been wide. It should have been moved. The structure should have been reset. You should have thinned that out a little bit more. Look how dense it is. Look at the dieback that's on the inside of that particular pad. And I have no doubt that in my mind it would have been, it's multiple days to work on this tree. And the areas where I let myself down and let the tree down would have been those ones where I got tired. It would have been where I get to and go, I just want this thing done. I just want to finish it and move on to the next tree. I'm sick of being spiked. I'm sick of drawing blood every time I work on this tree. And this time I was very deliberate about it, saying, no, just be thorough. You've got to you've got to get your shape. Yep, sure you do. But you've got to look at the structure of the tree. Does it need to be improved? What about the thin out? What about removing all that dead stuff that's on the inside? Have a look at the complexities of that pad design. Does it suit? Is it right? Is it correct? And, for me, I look back through obviously old photos that I post and whatever, and I can see advancement. And I love, with that particular one, I put up a photo when it was I first acquired the thing. And, if someone had told me nearly 10 years later it would look like it does now, back then I wouldn't have believed it. Maybe I would have, but I definitely am very proud of what I've done. But that comes from being meticulous and doing the little things, making sure your scissors are sharp and clean, and making sure that you're looking at things from a different perspective, and making sure you're taking your time and developing a plan for things, making sure that you don't just hack into these things and sort of, maybe regret a decision that you've made. Because I look back at that raw piece of material, shocking photo that it was, terrible quality, but I look back at that original photo and, I'm not sure I would have had the same vision today as what I had 10 years ago. I'm glad I did, because I love the tree that it is now. I think it's perfect in my eyes, or very close to perfection for what I see for that particular variety and that particular species and that particular tree itself. I don't think that there's anything that I really want to change in the future with that tree, other than a few minor things here and there for positioning of pads. But working with a long-term vision 10 years ago has meant that I've got a beautiful bonsai, one that I love dearly. And that's the importance of planning. And sometimes I talk about it a lot, but with my trees, I don't do that reminiscence back to the commencement of a project or a tree, and I don't get to get that sense of, oh, wow, that's actually worked. That plan's come together quite nicely. Doing all those things along the way and making sure that I'm thorough and diligent, and my feeding regime's right and everything that goes with it. I don't often get that nice reminder that, hey, you've actually done pretty good with this. So it was nice with that tree to work my way back through it and give myself a bit of a pat on the back and say, yeah, it's lovely, and and do things right. But anyway, I just want to get back to the point. Make sure that every single area that you're working, put on those blinkers. Make sure that you're absolutely 110% thorough with what you've done before you tick the box and say, yeah, okay, that one's done, I'm moving on to the next one, because it'll make such a big difference to the tree. And you might think that it's overkill what I'm saying, but as your tree gets more and more developed and more advanced, you will find that there's a lot more branches. Things double every year. That's pretty much the rule of growing a tree. We prune it, it divides, it doubles. So what might seem like a bit of overkill from Scott saying, be thorough. Yeah, okay, well, I've got 3 branches. I've been thorough. I'm moving on. Next it's 6, 12, 24. It just keeps jumping away year on year. And suddenly good practice starts a long time ago. You don't just wait until something's perfect and then start saying, okay, now I'm going to do things correctly. It starts from when you plant that seed, from when you take that cutting, from when you first wire the tree. That being thorough is everything to that tree and what it's going to become. So now the next part sort of links to everything that I do. All right. And
we'll be right back.
Create Harmony is a podcast about setting an intentional rhythm and savoring God's blessings. In this place, we'll take a few minutes to celebrate everyday joys and remind ourselves how to notice goodness that is all around us. During the winter at Create Harmony, we shift our focus to all things cozy and snuggly. And while our days are shorter and darker, we stay attuned to the things that help us reset and restore. At the start of this new year, our podcast is filled with winter self-care as well as ways to declutter and clear your mind. Check it out.
I don't like substandard work. And that doesn't mean that you have to be brilliant at everything. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't improve your skill, but you must. You absolutely must. This is a non-negotiable. You must do everything to the best of your ability. Even if the best of your ability isn't brilliant, just do everything to the best of your ability. No shortcuts, no substandard work, no sloppy work, no hacking at things, no cutting corners. It makes such a big difference to your bonsai, which is lovely. And that's the ultimate goal. But I can tell you deep down, when you look back at what you've done, you've got to be bloody proud of what you've done. And this, I think, applies to everything. I talk about it with my kids. I always have. Always talk about you don't need to always be the best at something, but you've got to make sure that you do everything thoroughly. And that's not for anyone else. It's 100% not so you can send a photo to me and I can go, hey, that's brilliant. It's because it's for you. It's bonsai is one of these things, these feelings that we, this lifestyle. It's whatever it is that you see bonsai as, but it's very important. And it's you've got control or responsibility for something that's living, and you take that very seriously. I don't care if it's an animal, a person, a plant, a tree, whatever it is. You take that responsibility extremely seriously, and I find that whether it's I'm doing some handyman jobs around the yard or mowing my lawns. I'm not over the top with it, but I certainly make sure that every time I do it, I don't leave anything undone. I can't stand looking at something thinking, oh yeah, I'll get to that next time. And then next time comes around, it's like, yeah, geez, you should have done that weeks ago because now it looks shocking. So I find that when I'm in front of my trees or whenever I'm working on my trees, little things like my wiring, I always stop and think, okay, so let's join the dots. How's this going to connect? And it is a lot of muscle memory with what I do. It's a lot of that repeated practice that you do that kicks in along the way. But it's also that significant mental energy that you put into these things to make yourself physically stop, think about what you're going to do, and then make sure that it's done absolutely as good as you possibly can. I hate looking at my wiring and thinking that could be better, or that's sloppy. That's not as good as what you've done in the past. I cannot stand it, and always happens when I'm tired. Always, without fail, I can guarantee you. When I'm bright and early in the morning, when I'm first up, when I've got my coffee in hand, and I feel like I'm jumping out of my skin because I'm so full of bloody enthusiasm. Everything seems to go well. Everything's perfect. It's great. Later in the day, once you've been on it for 6, 7, 8 hours, whatever it is, I find that you can start getting tired, and when I start getting tired, that's when things start going wrong. And I have this process in my head where I don't make important decisions when I'm tired, and that applies to every single part of my life. Whether it was previous life running a business, I'd always make the important decisions early in the morning because I know that that's when I'm at my peak. I generally record this podcast close to the morning because I know that I've had a good night's sleep. Yeah, it's funny. Normally when I know I'm recording the podcast, I can't sleep in. I can't. If it's on a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever it is, I can't sleep in. I'm up as the sun's coming up because I'm excited. And I know, I'm planning things in my head. I'm going through my notes, and it's like, geez, you really should have taken a bit of a chill pill and relaxed. It's the podcast. You'll be okay. You've done it that many times. But I get excited about stuff, so I find that I can't sleep in. But, making sure that I'm doing things to the best of my ability and making sure that in my own mind I'm not tolerating substandard work. If I feel that I start to do something and it's slipping, like it's not as good as what it was for the previous branch, or it's not as good as what it was a few hours ago, then I've got to change focus. I've got to stop. I've got to say, okay, let's just leave that because there's no race. I don't have to have this thing done today or tomorrow. I'm not doing it for anyone else. I'm doing it for the tree, and I'm doing it for me. So I'm not under pressure to perform for these things, so I can take my time and go, right, let's just stop for a minute. Let's go and get a cup of tea, put your feet up for a second. All right, now you're refreshed. All right, now get back into it. And sometimes, I find myself so neck deep in working on my trees that time seems to zip past. And what started as, seeing the sun come up is well past the sun going down, and it's dark outside, and time sort of zips past because I'm in the zone. And I've got to force myself to say, don't tolerate it. It's important to get this stuff right and make sure that those 1%ers make such a big difference. So don't tolerate substandard work because that's when mistakes happen as well. That's when you'll overdo things, you'll break branches, and you may not see it just now, but you'll come back in a couple of months' time and that branch will be nice and brown. And especially working with junipers, they don't show the impact of your mistreatment for quite a while. So it's really important to make sure that you're thorough, that you're meticulous, that you're pushing things to your best of your ability, and make sure that you're not cutting corners anywhere along the way. And so the last point that I want to make on working with trees, which I think is the most important, often when I get into seasonal work for trees, be it my native pruning, be it working with junipers, be it decandling, be it repotting, be it blah, 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 whatever it is I've got in front of me to do, I'm in a position where, and I think this will apply to a lot of people, is you're in a position where there's often a bank up of work. You've got a build up of things that need to be done. It's never just one. If it is, I don't think it'd be that way for very long, but you never got one tree that needs to be repotted. For me, it's hundreds, and it might not be that extent for you, but it's often easy to look at the mountain of work in front of you and get a bit overawed by it. You can't see the forest for the trees, for want of a better analogy, but it's so true. Like you can suddenly be thinking about something else that's in the future that you've got to get done, that maybe is on a time constraint, and you're not necessarily thinking about what's here and now, what's right in front of you. And I think it's really important that you give your complete respect to the tree that's in front of you right now. Don't cut corners. Don't think about anything else. Only think about that tree. Yeah, sure, there's other things that need to be done, but if you think too far in the future, if you think about other trees, then that tree that's in front of you is not going to get its due acknowledgement. And it's really important that you respect them, because they are something that's really important. And whatever's in front of you right now may become the world's best bonsai. It has potential to be, with the right plan, with the right care, with the right approach, whatever it is that's sitting in front of you right now could be one of those trees that you look at and go, wow, that is magnificent. All it needs is the plan and the time and the dedication from you to get it there. Make sure that you're applying all the good technique and the good processes and caring for it the way it should be cared for. And it 100% has the potential to be an absolutely incredible bonsai. Might take a long time. I'm not interested in that. That's neither here nor there. It doesn't need to be that brilliant bonsai in 6 months' time. It just has to have the potential to do it, and you need to make sure that you're respecting that tree in front of you, because all trees are grand. You walk into a forest, and it's not just the behemoths that you're drawn to. It's every single one, because that monster that's in front of you that you look at, that you go, whoa, your jaw hits the floor and go, that's amazing. Look at that thing. The little seed that's just sprouted on the ground beside it, that's where that one started. So it takes time and dedication and respect, and making sure that everything's perfect for these trees to get to where they should. And it sounds crazy, but every little cut that you make on that tree has a part to play. It makes a big difference. You might look at a tree and go, well, there's 3 cuts to make on this thing. Big deal. What's he talking about? It's no biggie. But those cuts determine the future direction that tree's going to take. As you're looking up the trunk, your leader, which way is it going to go? Do I cut it here to go to the left? Do I cut it there to go to the right? Does it come to the front a little bit? Does it go to the back a little bit? What's the plan? Where's this tree going to go? And that, it might sound easy. 3 cuts, 3 seconds, you're done, put it back on the bench. But you are making decisions for that tree and what it's going to look like for the rest of its life. And I'm not trying to be overly dramatic. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to instill in you that you need to respect those decisions and respect the tree, because it's relying on you as its custodian to make the correct call for it. If you cut it and it goes to the right and suddenly the design structure is completely gone, it won't be, but I'm just making a point. If you cut it, goes to the right, well, then the tree's possibly not going to be as good as what it could have been if you cut it and it had gone to the left. Is there somewhere in the future that you can change the plan and have it go back to the left? Yeah, of course you can. So it's not the end of the world if you make the wrong decision, but just my point is that you've got to give your time, your greatest asset that you've got is your time, and you've got to invest it in that tree, because the tree's relying on you to say, well, what are we doing? Where am I going to end up? How's this plan of yours going to play out? You don't just look at a stick in a pot and go, yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I'll just cut it here. Yeah, no worries. I'm not going to worry about it. It's like my thoughts on the soil that you use for trees in training. It should be no different, no different to the trees that you have that are world-class bonsai, because everything starts with the tree's strength, which comes from its root system. So putting it in crap soil is going to delay that from happening. So I think that as quickly as you possibly can, you get into the best soil possible and start building the root system, because the quicker that develops, the quicker the tree is going to develop. But that's all part of that respect process. I think that if you look at everything in your collection and you think that, hey, this has the chance to be the best, you've got my 100% dedication, well, and you'll do the best you possibly can, then you make those decisions at that time, and things start to jump away a lot quicker. I have so many trees come through the workshop, or the stuff that I see, that it's like, I'm just developing this one, so I'm not really fussed about it. Yeah, but you should. You should be fussed about it. You should respect it, and you should. It's not just going to get there by itself. It's not miraculously going to sit in your backyard for 5 years and suddenly, presto, it's got so much potential now. That potential comes when you buy nursery stock and you go, wow, look what they've done. Love the trunk, love the Nibaria. Now I'm going to start building the structure on this thing. That's because the nurseryman has put all that care and respect into getting it to that point. So having a tree in your yard that you want the same thing out of is only going to come from your dedication and your focus to get it to that point. It doesn't just happen by just leaving it sit somewhere for 5 years and suddenly, hey presto, it's turned into a beautiful butterfly. It doesn't happen that way. So anyway, I just think that there's some really important points that I was saying in my head when I was working on this big Femina for 3 and a bit days, where I had to remind myself of these things constantly, to make sure that I was doing things to the best of my ability, make sure I was giving the tree the respect that it deserved, that I was changing my perspective to look at things, that I wouldn't tolerate anything that was substandard on this tree, that I wanted it to be the best, the very best that I could possibly do, and little things, the 1% is making sure my tools were clean and sharp really made such a big difference, and it's the thing that I can look back at that tree now, and I know that it's 12 months before I work on it again. It's a once a year tree for me. So I like to take my time. I like to make sure that I can sit there and I have it just outside my workshop. So whenever I work on any other tree, whenever I first get up in the morning, I walk through the workshop, it's one of the first trees that I see on display. It's got to be something that I'm always proud of for the next 12 months. So any corners that I'd cut, any point that I'd got to before I said, yeah, that's done, put a bow on it, I'm finished, I would regret for 12 months. So I can tell you that, I'm a happy chappy, and the tree looks absolutely bloody brilliant. So I'm stoked. So anyway, hopefully that helps you as you get into your work on your trees throughout 2025. Thank you, folks, for listening in. Thank you for your love and support and loyalty. It's admirable. It's very, very nice. I love the kind words that get sent through about the podcast, and everyone's looking forward to a great 2025, which I know I certainly am. I know that I'm trying to make sure, as I said last week, that every tree takes a positive step forward. And I look back on that through the week as I was preparing for this podcast. And it makes me smile. It makes me that little thought that it doesn't need to be massive. It's taken a weight off my shoulders. I don't need to jump through hoops on every single tree that comes through my collection. I know that I'm going to be doing the right thing because it's got to be a positive step forward for every single tree. But it means that it can be something which is achievable, and that's really important with your goals or your plans for your bonsai and for yourself this year. It could be something that you want to focus on, like improving your wiring. It could be something that you want to develop greater skill with, designing a pad. Whatever it is, it doesn't need to be, get to know the ins and outs of every single species that grow native in your country. It might be one. You might pick one particular tree and go, you know what, I'm going to do a bit more research on this one tree that I have in my collection. I want to know more about it. Whatever it is. But anyway, it makes me, it's like I said, it feels like there's a weight being lifted off my shoulder. It makes me happy. And it makes certain that I'm going to be doing the right thing by every single one of the trees that I have in my collection. And that makes me pretty impressed and pretty happy, to be honest. So anyway, I hope 2025 is looking forward to being a great year for you, for your bonsai. I think that our bonsai community is around the world, because this podcast does reach the furthest corners of the continent, which surprises and amazes me and makes me love it even more. But I think that our network, when we're combined, if we can support each other and we can lift each other up, then that's a great thing. Positivity goes a bloody long way. When you're asked for your opinion on something, do that lift up rather than the push down. If you don't like something, scroll on, move on. Don't get involved. Don't spread the negativity. There's plenty of that around. We just don't need that. And I think that when you look at the way a forest is structured or built, that every tree supports every other tree that's part of that forest, and that's what us bonsai lovers should be. We should be like those trees in the forest. Some of us have, the old ancients. Some of us are the new fresh seed that's just grown. It doesn't matter. We all support each other and nurture each other and make sure that for the good of the forest, they all survive and they all get what they need to flourish and to be there for when they are needed to step up and become that old grand tree that supports the forest. Every little tree is supporting that forest. And I think that our bonsai community, we should act like the forest and just support each other because it's the right thing to do. And I know that we are definitely capable of it because we're tree lovers. And tree lovers are good people. There's nothing negative about tree lovers. So anyway, thanks for listening in. I love it as always. See you next week. I know that I know a lot of people listen to this as part of their weekly routine. It means a lot to me and fantastic. And I guarantee that I'll be back with another episode next week. So thanks for listening in. Love the support. Thank you, supporters, for coming on board. That money that you contribute to the Bonsai Stuff podcast really means a lot. So thank you very much. Until next time, happy bonsai.